Welcome to this explainer. Gather close by the dying fire today because we are walking straight into the shadows of a truly grim, dark fable. We're going to explore a frankly terrifying philosophical concept. What if the very language you speak, the actual words forming in your mind right now, are actually the primary architecture of your own cage? We usually like to think of our tongue as a bridge for connection, right? But what if it's a trap? Let's unpack the chilling architecture of the linguistic cage.
Right off the bat, I want to hook you with this absolutely chilling realization from our source material. Listen to this. The word did not describe the end, it performed it. I mean, that just flips everything we know about communication completely on its head. The grammar we trust implicitly doesn't just name our reality, it actively unbuilds it. It's not a passive reflection of the world. Actually, it's more like an active, predatory force that reshapes our existence without asking for our permission.
Okay, so let's set up our philosophical starting point here. We're going to look at this through a classic Fichtean dialectic. A clash of opposing ideas that eventually forge something new. Our thesis, our comforting starting point, is traditional logos. This is the illusion that language is a creative tool, just a simple organ for the spilling of human intent and agency. But then we violently hit the antithesis, logos reversed. Here, language is revealed as a predatory force. It's a structural prison built from ancient sedimented sounds that were laid down long before we even learned to speak. You aren't the master of your speech, you're really just a tenant in its ancient structure.
And this brings us to a terrifying concept, known as the philological void. We see this void perfectly encapsulated in the fable's image of the bard's stringless lute. Think about it. Even without strings, it hums with this uncanny frequency. This proves that the music, the meaning itself, lives not in vibrating air, but within the changing, rotting roots of our verbs. It's an active, terrifying vacancy. When you dig into the history of speech, you don't find pure light or beautiful origins. Instead, you find a twitching corpse of meaning that essentially demands new blood.
So the real kicker here is that language operates as a predatory process, and it demands human sacrifice. It happens in 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is the exhumation of the dead syllable, digging up those ancient roots. Step 2 is the consumption of the present anatomy, where the speaker is used as nothing more than a vessel. And step 3 is the permanent erasure of the referent, leaving a total void behind. It moves logically and entirely mercilessly toward the total consumption of the speaker.
Let's trace how this uncanny unraveling takes hold across time through the 5 parables of the uncanny. It starts 500 years ago with cadaver radices, where a man digs for the true name of his home only to uncover a forgotten corpse of meaning. Then, jump to 50 years ago, we see the shift of a homely vowel. 2 days ago, a magistrate literally becomes a speaking instrument. And finally, just 1 hour ago, the ultimate theft of the noun.
Take the Lyman Heimlich, for example. The threshold of the homely. As time marched on in our fable, a single ancient law of sound shifted a vowel in a village of singers. Suddenly, these cozy hearth songs instantly transformed into funeral hymns. It dressed estrangement in the comfortable clothing of home, as neighbors looked at each other and suddenly saw only strangers. The familiar was completely hollowed out and consumed by the alien.
Then you have the horrific fate of the magistrate, the instrumentum loquens. He was a guy with real authority who actually thought he could command this silent lute, but as he reached out to pluck the invisible strings, his fingers froze into stiff wood. His very body became the physical scaffolding for the song. He learned way too late that, die Sprache spricht. Language speaks. It requires human anatomy to serve as its resonance chamber, literally consuming the speaker to maintain its ancient song. Which brings us to the terrifying structural finality of the logos reversed. See, while old scriptures claimed the word created the world, this grammar was designed to unbuild it. Syllable by structural syllable, the final verse didn't just describe the town's destruction, it actively performed it. Syntax is no longer just a metaphor here. It acts as literal iron bars, locking reality in place. The prison is constructed entirely of dead verbs and stolen nouns.
And then, the final hour strikes. Furtum nominis, the theft of the name. Nouns are literally stolen from the air, resulting in total linguistic nihilism. The citizens felt the wounds of their destruction, but their referential apparatus was just gone. They couldn't name their pain. They couldn't call for help. Without a noun to stand upon, there was only a silent vacancy where the soul once resided.
a permanent erasure of the self.
So out of this terrible quiet, right as the bard's monologue fades out, this majestic, completely alien form emerges from the foggy forest. This is the synthesis of our dialectic. The thesis of language as a tool and the antithesis of the void have violently collided. The result is a total systemic collapse, signaled by the arrival of something entirely new.
Enter the shadow Griffin. Now this isn't some creature of flesh and feather. No, it is a living shadow cast by a dead sun. This beast is the absolute materialization of the philological void. It proves that the grammar of the uncanny is no longer just a spoken curse or some abstract academic concept. It is now a physical shape that can literally hunt in the real world.
Our sources describe the Griffin with this honestly incredible phrase, an active performance of vacancy. Think about that. Its silent prowling represents complete philological nihilism through its empty form. It acts as a predator that feeds on the fragile threads of our definitions. It hunts meaning itself until listeners are completely consumed and become nothing more than a part of its darkened plumage.
If we look closely at the anatomical breakdown of this beast, the abstract becomes totally literal. Its sprawling, spread wings, they signify the physical scaffolding of the linguistic cage, permanently cementing the eternal imprisonment of the village. Its empty form represents that active vacancy consuming the present, and its silence, that is the unvoiced scream of absolute truth, echoing long after human expression has been erased.
To actually look upon the Griffin is to witness the total, absolute collapse of expression and constitution. It's horrifying when you realize that this creature is basically a majestic trap built entirely from the forgotten corpses of dead syllables, the twitching remains of what language has already consumed. It is the final instrument of a grammar that mankind simply does not and cannot understand.
So the Griffin serves this very specific, devastating grammatical function. It acts as the unwritten noun. Now, a normal written noun is comforting, right? It gives you agency, it allows you to name your suffering and have it witnessed by others. But the Griffin, as the unwritten noun, is inescapable. It becomes the sole object that can be referenced. It enforces a state of linguistic nihilism, where the villager's suffering has nowhere left to live. It anchors their suffering while coldly erasing all remaining human agency to even express it.
As its shadow finally falls over the bard and his audience, the implication is just staggering. It becomes horrifyingly clear that the language of the old gods has moved out of some dusty academic origin story and into a permanent predatory residence right in our physical world. The study of ancient roots isn't passive, it's a living process that wakes up things that want to feed on the present.
Which leads us to the ultimate, terrifying finality of this fable. No one can ever leave the linguistic cage. The scaffolding of the prison is completely finalized by the Griffin's wings. Meaning has been so thoroughly trapped, so completely devoured, that the Griffin's unvoiced scream is literally the only truth you have left to own.
I'm going to leave you with this provocative warning to ponder long after this explainer ends. Take heed of the syllables currently forming in your mouth. Because if your tongue is the primary architecture of your cage, who is actually speaking when you answer this question? Are you truly the master of your speech, or are you just another set of lungs breathing the void into life? Really think about that the next time you open your mouth to speak. Until next time, keep questioning the structures around you.